That's going to be even harder than potentially this back and forth that we've been seeing to keep the government open tonight. I caught up with House Speaker Johnson earlier tonight, as well as Leader Thune, in individual interviews pressing them on what happens next. Well, for Republicans, they're going to keep putting on the floor that clean funding extension, their 7-week plan to essentially extend current funding levels. They're going to put that on the floor over and over again, trying to pick off Democrats. They already picked off 3 of them tonight to try and get at least 8 so they can join Republicans and reopen the government. As for Democrats, I also spoke to Leader Chuck Schumer, saying he is dug in. Why? Because of healthcare provisions that he says could lapse, could hike up premiums on millions of Americans. The fight is now, and really this is all about the Democratic base and trying to appease the very voters that they will rely on to win back some ground that they lost in November, Stephen.
And anytime we have a shutdown like this, Julie, it's that question of who will ultimately end up with the blame. We know there's tons of sound bites from Democrats that are being played there to try to show what they said the last time around when this happened. I do know the Senate is going to be back in session today. Is there any chance this could end quickly?
Yeah, they'll be back in session 10 hours from now. Aside from reporters standing by me from different networks, this building is a ghost town. There are no lawmakers in here. The Senate adjourned hours ago, seemingly resigned to the fact that the government was going to shut down. There's nothing that they could do, no last-minute negotiations that could prevent it. So 10 hours from now, the Senate will be back in session. And when I asked John Thune, who does control the floor, given that Republicans are in the majority, what are you going to do to get the government out of this posture to help the millions of Americans who could be impacted by this? He said we will continue to put on the floor that 7-week stopgap funding bill. I asked, will you take anything less than that? He said absolutely not, and that is because they do have an appropriations process. This is not the way the government is supposed to be funded. I think our viewers are getting tired of this fight over and over again. We're always in this place. Now it's official. The government did run out of money. The lights are technically on around me, but they're really off in so many different aspects. And so this is going to be one for Democrats and Republicans to come to the table on and decide. I will tell you anecdotally, as we talk about the Democratic base, I uploaded videos to my social media platforms today, and so many of the comments are egging on Democratic leaders to keep fighting, even if it means the government is closed. Now, the gamble, will it pay off? There's also independents. There's other voters who rely on government services. That's a tough one for Democrats.
Yeah, and how long people will actually put up with those inconveniences, those loss of services, the big question there. We do know, Julie, the president has talked about actually laying people off instead of the furloughs that we typically see for federal workers when we're in one of these shutdown situations. Do we know when that could actually start happening?
I asked Leader Thune about that too. He seemed to be wary of this. He said hopefully all of this will be unnecessary. And look, there are some reporting. There, of course, are moves that we followed throughout the year where Republicans have made it pretty clear, President Trump made it clear that he doesn't necessarily mind if they reduce the size and scope of the federal workforce, if they reduce the size and scope of the federal government. So some Democratic sources that I spoke to say, well, they were going to do this anyway. They're just making it conveniently about the government funding fight. But in all reality, even when the government has laid off workers over the last couple of months, we've seen agency by agency ask those workers to come back because it is very hard to operate the government as big as it is with a reduced workforce that even the president wants. He's doing this, of course, as a threat. They're playing hardball with Democrats. It didn't work, though, because that threat came out a couple of days ago, and so far, as we've seen, Democrats did not cave. But certainly this is something that is going to impact so many Americans. The Congressional Budget Office that we were talking about that predicted 750,000 employees would be furloughed, meaning working without pay, requiring back pay. There is a potentially different number of workers that could just lose their jobs. I got a memo, for example, from somebody at the Department of Justice. It said very vaguely that some departments within the DOJ even will cease to operate the longer this shutdown continues. So this has real implications for Americans, but the administration blaming Democrats squarely for all of it.
And we've heard the president talk about using this as an opportunity to cut other services that he knows Democrats find important. Julie, take us back in time just briefly, if you can. The longest shutdown in history that happened under the first Trump administration, 34 days over that border wall funding. How were we able as a country to climb out of that shutdown?
Well, Americans felt the pain, and they made that very clear to Democrats and Republicans. Remember the time that we were in 2019. 2020 was an election year. President Trump lost that Kevin McCarthy, then House Speaker, lost his job because he made a very last-minute deal to keep the government open because he knows how unpopular government shutdowns are. Democrats are taking this major risk right now by trying to message to the American people not only on the health care provisions, but think about what Congress is supposed to do. Their most important job is to fund the government. Democrats and Republicans control the power of the purse strings. That 60-vote threshold that we always talk about is still relevant in the Senate, and so Republicans can't keep it open without Democrats. It will take both sides to compromise to get out of it. Stephen.
All right, we'll see if and when that can happen. Julie Sirkin, thank you. And that concludes this NBC News special report. We'll have